PaleoRunner is devoted to finding better ways to live, run, train, and eat. I'm your host, Aaron Olson. You can find more information by going to PaleoRunner.org. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. This helps other people find the show by moving the show up in the rankings. Search for PaleoRunner in iTunes and click Ratings and Reviews. PaleoRunner is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/PaleoRunner. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Audible is a great way to keep learning while you're doing other activities. Lately, I've been listening to Steven Pinker's latest book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. Go to PaleoRunner.org and click Audible at the top of the page for your free audiobook download. If you're listening to this podcast through iPhone, click on the link displayed on the screen right now. My guest today is Josh Klimek. Josh recently ran a 2:29 Boston Marathon wearing the Vibram FiveFingers. Josh, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
So, was that your first Boston Marathon that you ran?
Yeah, that was my first experience with Boston. It was my only third marathon, full marathon that I ran. So yeah, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, what was that like? I mean, tell me more about it. I've heard so much about the Boston Marathon and that it's just lined, the whole thing is lined with people and they're constantly cheering you on. Was that your experience?
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely different than what I'm used to. I mean, there's seriously 26.2 miles of people along the course, just cheering, holding their hands out for high fives, everything like that. Just the simple fact that most of my races I'm not used to running with people, other runners, so being around that many runners of that caliber was a lot of fun too.
Awesome. Yeah, and you took 83rd place, right?
Yeah, 83rd overall.
That's awesome. So you actually had a few people around you that you could pace yourself off. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, there was a couple of medium-sized groups of runners. I was kind of bouncing back and forth in between them. I actually somehow ended up by myself, within like 10 seconds of a group here or there. A couple of times during the race, but that was even interesting because even at that point, you hear the people, they see you, by yourself, and they see your numbers, so they're like, hey, go 2:39, you're doing great. And it's like, all right. So you still have those people on the sidelines, shout for you.
So you were talking there about your experience at Boston. How many marathons had you done before that?
I had done two. My first was in 2006. I ran the Seattle Marathon.
Okay.
I'm from Washington State, so yeah, Seattle was my first one. And that was they do it in late November, which late November in the Pacific Northwest is just completely terrible weather to run in. I think the morning of the race it was like 34 with light snow, and then warmed up to like 37 and rain. So I was actually preferring the light snow at that point. But it was a tough one. I swore to myself when I was done that I would never do another marathon again. Especially since I had like running tights on and Under Armour and everything. So all that just had to be resistance bands for 26 miles. But yeah. And then I did one last May in 2012, which was my qualifying race for Boston.
Oh, nice. Where'd you run that one?
That one was the Capital City Marathon here in Olympia, Washington, where I live.
Okay.
So I kind of made a plan at the beginning of the year to I wanted to get a Boston qualifying time in. I wanted to run Boston, so hadn't done a full marathon in it's been 6 years. So I enough time had passed that all that trauma from the first one had kind of hit to the back of my memory. I decided to only remember the good parts of it. So yeah, I was at least motivated enough to do another one.
So how much have you improved since running your 2:29? What did you start out at, and where have you came from?
I've actually my first marathon it was a 3:28:14 I think was my time. So I pulled just about an hour off my original marathon time.
Wow, that's a huge improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, had you shown signs that you could run faster? What did you run in college and high school, and you knew you had the speed, or was this just out of the blue? You started training and you ended up being a really good runner. What?
It was. I've been running for about 18 years now. And I did track and cross country through middle school, high school, and into college. So I had a lot of running experience, but never always been 5Ks, 8Ks in college. So shorter distances. I hadn't done anything super long. I think my first one was more, it was tough conditions, weather conditions in and of itself. But I think it was just I needed some more time. I did a lot of half marathon. kind of between my first hole and my second hole. So
Okay.
needed more experience with the longer distances, I think, is really what it boiled down to.
Okay. At what point did you decide to start going with the Vibram FiveFingers?
I did that about 2.5 years ago. I had kind of we had in 2008 we had my oldest son was born, so I kind of running kind of took a side step from that point. So I was still running like a race or two a year, but nothing really serious. It was hard to get out there and justify going out for an hour and a half long training run when the wife is home all day with the kids, and I get home from work and be like, hey, I'm going running. That never goes over as well.
Yeah.
So it definitely it kind of took a back, and then so I was kind of coming from a place of fairly low conditioning. And one of my friends at work showed me the shoes. And I'd always kind of all through college, my coach had reinforced, had always mentioned, barefoot running is the optimal way to kind of do things. And we would always go out and do drills, always so terrible. Like, it would be like 8 in the morning. We'd do drills barefoot in a wet grassy field. We always do them barefoot. And so I always had this understanding that, barefoot running was a good way to go. And when I saw the shoes, I'm like, hey, I'll give it a try.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to break into them?
When I originally got them, I was actually significantly more ambitious probably than I should have been. I got them about 6 weeks before my first attempted half marathon. By about mile 10 or 11, I was pretty beat. The leg muscles were definitely feeling it.
Wait, are you saying you tried your first time wearing them during a half marathon?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
The first race I did was a half marathon in them.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I definitely wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But I came out injury free. The leg muscles were definitely hitting me. It took at least 8 weeks before 8 weeks starting in the shoes before my calf muscle stopped screaming at me every time. But yeah. I mean, I came through. I think I finished at like 122 or something like that. So I mean, it was about average what I'd been, but I definitely had wanted to accomplish it in the FiveFingers.
Mm-hmm. So your coach had taught you to run barefoot, and that was the best way. What did you feel when you started wearing them? Did you feel faster, lighter? What sort of things drew you to them to make you want to keep pursuing this sort of barefoot style of running?
It was always, I don't know, it's always an odd feeling. Like every time I'd put them on, it was kind of an indescribable feeling of just kind of having like more energy in every step. Which, I mean, I don't know if there's any sort of, scientific basis for that or not, or if it's just all mental, but, I don't know, it was, and I always had a stride that was, I was always kind of on my forefoot, on my toe. So my stride really worked well for what the shoes encourage you to do anyways. With my old, I just wear, regular like trainers when I do my half marathon. So I always had this stride that I was like basically trying to jump over all that heel rubber. So I'd have a much more bounciness to my run. Which since I've switched over to FiveFingers, it comes more like my foot swings through a little bit lower, and because I'm not having to jump over that heel rubber.
Okay. Have you seen any other marathoners that are up at the front of the pack with you that are wearing FiveFingers? I've
actually, that was what caught me off guard when I first started wearing them, is that I was, I'd always heard the great advantages of running barefoot, and so, I threw the shoes on, I started running, and like nobody around me, everybody would see the shoes, they'd give me kind of this weird look. Like, he's not really doing that in those shoes, is he? But yeah, no, there was maybe, I occasionally saw like 1 or 2 people like in the whole race wearing them, but never anybody around where I was at. So I started, I started to try to like find, what are other, is this really a good idea to be doing that in these shoes? How come nobody else doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you went from around 122 half marathon. You pick up the FiveFingers, you start doing a little bit more training, and I think your half marathon PR now is like around 110, right?
Yeah. I did a 1:10:57 at the beginning of this year.
Wow, that's an incredible time. Tell our listeners how you got to that point. It wasn't just through the FiveFingers. I mean, you must have been doing some pretty intense training too. Can you talk a little bit about what you do for your weekly training to get to that point?
Yeah. No, it's, I try to get between 50 and 75 miles in a week, which most of my running I end up doing at work on my lunch break. But yeah, I do try to get at least 7 miles a day or so in. And then 2 to 3 times a week, I try to throw in some sort of speed. So usually Tuesdays I'll be doing, or my big speed days. So I'll try to do probably it's usually a tempo run just because I'm limited on time for lunch. So I try to get as many miles in as fast as I can. So I'll sit there and try to do 7 miles, around 5 to I've been recently averaging about 5:50 pace or so. And then I usually do that in the flat course. Fridays is I throw in another speed workout. Usually over some sort of hilly terrain. And then I'll choose typically a Sunday to do a longer tempo style run, upwards of, 20 miles or so. Try and throw in, trying to keep it under that 6-minute pace or so I get to keep a consistent marathon time going.
Okay, so 6-minute pace. What is a marathon pace for 2:29?
I think it boiled down to, it was like a 5:43.
Okay.
Average mile time, yeah.
So you're doing pretty close to marathon pace. Is that for your 20-mile long runs? Is that week after week? You're pretty much doing the same thing, or do you mix it up? How does that work?
Yeah. I usually try to mix up my mileage. So if I do a hard long tempo run like that, I'll do it 1 week, and then I'll do the next week. We'll be shorter on mileage and shorter on intensity. So that way I'm not driving myself every week that hard. Because even after that, I'll definitely be ready for a good day off, a nice long nap. Okay. Nothing else. But yeah.
So what was your best 20 miler before going into Boston?
My best 20 miler, I'm trying to think. I did a 22-mile training run. I held right at about 5:55 pace.
Nice.
But I'm trying to think of. I did a 20-mile race. But that was a good year and a half back or so. But that was right under 6-minute miles or so. Okay. And that was before my Boston qualifier race.
So going into Boston, did you know you wanted to break 2:30, or was that a surprise for you?
Yeah. I was really aiming to. I was really hoping to be able to break that 2:30 mark. My qualifying time was 2:35:40, and it was a fairly hilly course.
Okay.
I was thinking, with the way the Boston was set up, there's a lot of downhill in it. There is definitely some hills, especially on that second half. Those kind of took me by surprise as much as I was hoping to be able to just push through them. But I saw with the downhill that was in there, I had a really good chance to pull under 2:30, which actually, that was funny because the difference between my chip time and the gun time, when I was coming down the last stretch there, I was watching the clock and saw it tick over, as I'm passing under it ticked over to 2:30:01. Which completely destroyed me. I'm like, no way that I run this whole race just to cross under, a second low or 2 second low. And then, so I, slowly just hobbled my way down this seemingly endless finish chute. Cause they have it set up just for, the giant volumes of people coming through. Which at that point in the race, there wasn't a lot of finishers yet. So just this giant open corridor down the road, and, finally met up with my family, and they had all of my times on their phones because they've been following me, and they're like, you were 5 seconds under. And so I was happy when I saw that. Nice.
Now you actually went out a little fast. I think, didn't you do a 1:12 for your first half where you must have been feeling really good?
Yeah. And that first half there's a lot of downhill in it. So it's hard to hold back. Everybody's saying, we'll hold back, save yourself for the hills at the end. And I think I came through the half. I think it was 1:12:57, something like that. So it was right around 1:13. But yeah, I was going at a great pace. It was those final hills really ended up taking a lot out of me. Which they were deceptive because they're not steep enough that you hit them and you immediately think, oh man, this is quite the hill. But they're just steep enough and long enough that you get to the top and you realize that your legs are pretty much drained.
So what does someone who's running that fast eat? Are you doing goo packets or just Gatorade? What kind of nutrition are you doing on the run?
Yeah, I try to keep 2 or 3 goo packs with me. Whatever my racing shorts will hold, which is typically a lot. Luckily they were handing out some gel right before you hit the hills there. I usually try to hit that every 40-45 minutes or so, and then I hit most of the water. They had water every mile, so I was trying to hit every other mile, either hit water or Gatorade. I usually just alternate between the two. Haven't got a great strategy for that yet, but that seemed to work for the most part.
Okay. How about your nutrition on a daily basis? Do you follow a specific diet, or what kind of foods are you eating to keep
Um,
to keep in your performance up to a high level?
yeah. For the longest time, I was just the person to eat kind of whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. So I would just eat complete garbage. Um, but more recently, my wife is she's big into CrossFit, so she's been she goes for Paleo Diet
Oh, nice.
enough. So I'm the cook of the house. So I end up getting a lot of the paleo stuff by default. So when I'm cooking dinner, I'll just make extra and eat what she's eating. And that's actually, I mean, it's had a really good change for me. I mean, my stomach I was always battling with my stomach on those longer runs. It was to the point that I figured my biggest competitor out there was my stomach, because I would go out feeling great on the day and get to mile 3 and be looking for a porta potty somewhere. I got stopped. But I mean, I slowly figured out that there was certain things I could and couldn't eat. And it pretty much boiled down to the days before a race, I can, like, my dinner before a race is chicken. Like, just plain, like, I go to the grocery store, get like a rotisserie chicken, pull it apart, and like, okay, this is what I'm eating, because this is the only thing that I can eat that doesn't just mess me up the next day.
And you'll eat that the night before a marathon with no carbs, no potatoes or anything? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I've tried to, like, I was always trying to do pasta stuff, and I realized, like, even to the point that I would eat like plain pasta, that would still mess up my stomach. And then I've tried to throw in some other vegetables, things like that, sweet potatoes here and there, and like it still causes problems. So like the only thing that I found that boiled down to, like, I'll eat chicken.
Yeah.
Eat chicken, eat a lot of chicken, but that's about all I can handle.
Oh, that's really interesting. A lot of people that I've found that runners, especially who have had stomach issues and then try a more paleo style diet, have found a lot of relief from that. I know Timmy Olson, who won Western States, he's more on a paleo style diet because he was having stomach issues as well, and it seems to work pretty good. I know I'm not nearly as fast as you, but that's worked really well for me. Is eating a little bit more protein and even some fat has seemed to be easier on my stomach than the high carb route.
Yeah, no, and I think for most of my day to day stuff, it works out really well. I've seen a pretty significant turnaround in at least in the number of breaks I have to take on a long run. But yeah, it's just I don't know, for race stuff, it's pretty much just the protein. But yeah, the day to day stuff is with mostly vegetables, sweet potatoes, and protein. That's really ended up working for me really well.
Okay, awesome. That's great. So how have you been able to balance this high performance of running with, I saw on your Facebook, it looked like you had a few kids and you're married and you've got a job. How's that working for you? Balancing all this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's more of a juggling act than a balancing act. It's just it's madness most of the time.
How many kids do you have?
Got two boys.
Okay.
They're 3 and 5. So I tend to work more of a morning schedule. So I'll go into work at between 6 and 8 or so. Get off between 2 and 4. And then I'll get home, watch the kids. The wife will work. And that's why I do most of my running. I'll do my running at lunch. And then I'll try to get some sort of like weight training, something like that, in at home in the evenings. But and then I bike back and forth to work, so I get a little bit of workout in there with biking. But yeah, it's, for the most part, it's my sleep that suffers. So I just my life is pretty much just a series of power naps.
Okay. Do you have any plans to do anything? What do you have on the horizon? Do you have any more marathons planned? Do you also do trail races at all?
Most of my running is as much as I want to do more trail stuff. Most of my running tends to just end up on the road. I have the Capital City Marathon, the one I ran the qualifier, the Boston qualifying time in last year. I got that one coming up here on the I think it's the 19th. Right. So in a couple weeks. And then I have a couple half marathons scheduled. Longest race I got scheduled coming up here is in August. There's we have my running group hosts a 12-hour run in downtown Olympia. It's around the lake down there. And so basically start at 6 in the morning and run for 12 hours, and however many laps you can get is your finishing distance.
Oh, wow. And
yeah.
what, have you done that one before?
Yeah, I did that one last year. And that's another one that, I finished it up and I was like, I'm never doing that again. There's absolutely no shade down there. And in early August, it was a good 85 degrees sun the whole time. So it was definitely one of those, like, I finished and I'm like, no, I'm never doing this again. And then, a week or two later after I recovered, I'm like, yeah, I'll get that.
So how many miles are you hoping to get in that?
Last year I got just over 100K, so I got like 64 point something. So I'm hoping to top that. It'd be nice. I think the record for the course is like 87 miles, but that was on a fairly unseasonably cloudy August day. But I think if it's sunny again, it's going to be a tough one to top.
How do you go about training for a race that's long?
I jumped into doing some ultra stuff last summer, and I was again, just like my transition to FiveFingers, I was overly ambitious about it. So I think at the beginning of July, I decided I was going to do a 50-mile trail run, which took place at the end of July. So, I went out there and, like, I'm already kind of in marathon shape, though. I went out on actually July 4th, got up at like 4 in the morning and went out for like a 6.5 hour run. Just, I set up all the stuff on I set up a cooler and everything on my porch with, Gatorade and protein bars, things like that, all that stuff in there. And I just ran around, the neighborhoods for, 6.5 hours, coming back every hour or so to, refill some water and get food like that. But yeah, it was one of those that I just kind of, decided to jump into. And I, ended up having a very bad opinion of ultra running at the end of it. But that was because of my poor pre-planning.
Okay. So do you have any tips for beginners who might want to give FiveFingers a try?
Definitely, kind of the same thing a lot of other people say is, take it slow, take it easy. If you're starting from a point that you have very little conditioning, that's almost a good way to do it. Because I know, there's a lot of people who are, in great shape and then they want to transition over. But if you look at like the recommended processes for breaking into them, you're supposed to be, walking in them the first couple weeks, and then you break into running like a mile at a time. Like if you're already a fairly seasoned runner, that can be very difficult to do. So, if you come from a point that you don't have a lot of conditioning, a lot of running experience, that almost seems like the best place to start. That way you're not like gauging it against, what you're used to doing. And you're not also encouraged to go out there and try to do more than you're capable of. I guess one of the biggest lessons I learned is there's definitely a difference between doing a distance in a training run and actually racing a distance. I sat there and when I was building up I spent about 5 months building up for the first marathon I did know. And I went out and I was doing 20 to 22 miles on my training runs, feeling pretty good. And then I went out there and did a 20-mile race, and it just wiped me out. It took me a little bit of time to recover from that. So like there's definitely when you feel comfortable training and running the distance, then definitely you also got to ease into and ease up on the mileage if you're racing the distance well.
Well, Josh, are there any way that people listening can follow you? Are you on Twitter or Facebook so that we can keep up with your races that are coming up?
Yeah. I'm on Facebook. If you just search me, Josh Klimek, last name Klimek. My running group has a Facebook page too. It's Guerrilla Running, Guerilla Running. And they'll post about all the races that we've been doing and how our runners are doing. So that'd be another good way to keep in touch because I frequent their pages often enough too.
Well, Josh, it's been great talking to you, and I think our listeners will learn a lot. And congratulations on your great PR at Boston. That's really cool to see someone wearing FiveFingers out there running that fast. So, and thanks so much for being part of the show.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to another episode of Paleo Runner Podcast. For more information, go to PaleoRunner.org. Thanks for listening.